A young black man saves a millionaire's daughter from a mansion engulfed in flames. A story that will leave you in awe. What happens in the middle completely changes the ending. We'd love to know what city you're watching this from. Leave a comment. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and activate notifications to stay updated on all our content. The city had an atmosphere that combined the frenzy of skyscraper lights with the somber silence of slums sprawling over the hills. In the small neighborhood of Santo Antonio, 17-year-old Malik was finishing up repairing the last phone of the day. His makeshift workshop, located in the small apartment he shared with his mother, was his refuge. An escape toward a future that was still unclear to him, but which he knew existed somewhere beyond the concrete slopes. Malik had an impressive talent for electronics. There wasn't a device he couldn't fix, and his dream of studying engineering burned ever brighter inside him, fueled by a desire to provide a better life for his mother, Rosa, who struggled daily to put food on the table, working as a housekeeper for wealthy families on the other side of the city. On the other side of the city, a completely different reality unfolded in the Valverde family's mansion. Isabella, the only daughter of magnate Alberto Valverde, lived surrounded by luxury but felt an inexplicable emptiness. Her days were filled with meaningless social engagements, shopping trips, and parties full of people she didn't care about. Her relationship with her father was distant. Alberto was always absent, too busy with his business and billion-dollar deals. That night, a tragedy would change everything. A short circuit in the mansion's electrical system started a devastating fire. The flames spread quickly through the lower floors, consuming the luxurious rooms with terrifying ferocity. The family had already been evacuated by the security team, but Isabella, alone in her room on the third floor, was trapped. Panic overtook her as she desperately tried to find a way out. Thick smoke filled the room, stealing her breath as the heat from the flames licked the walls. Malik, who had gone out to deliver a repair device in a nearby neighborhood, saw the fire from afar. His curiosity and anxiety pushed him to get closer, feeling a mix of adrenaline and urgency. When he saw the desperate situation, with firefighters struggling to control the fire, something inside him clicked. He couldn't just stand by and watch. He knew he could do something. Without a second thought, Malik decided to act. Using his practical intelligence and sharp instincts, Malik bypassed the firefighters and found a side of the mansion that hadn't been fully overtaken by the fire. Climbing skillfully, he reached an open window on the second floor and managed to enter the collapsing mansion. The heat was unbearable, and the smoke made it nearly impossible to see anything ahead. But Malik pressed forward, driven by an inner force he hadn't known he possessed. The flames devoured the Valverde mansion like a hungry beast, spewing black smoke that spiraled densely into the night sky. Outside, chaos reigned. Firefighters dashed back and forth, trying to tame the fire, but the flames were relentless, swallowing the luxurious property with a ferocity that made time feel like it was speeding up. Isabella, trapped on the third floor, felt herself suffocating. The smoke filled the room with alarming speed, robbing her of oxygen and her senses. Her body paralyzed with panic, Isabella unsuccessfully searched for a way out. The windows were barred with heavy iron grates, a protection against intruders that now sealed her fate. The heat was almost unbearable, and her hands trembled as she held her cell phone, which had stopped working just when she needed help the most. Each breath brought a poisonous mix of smoke and despair, until, exhausted, her knees gave way and she collapsed to the floor. Outside, Malik watched the fire with wide eyes. He didn't belong here. This world of mansions and imported cars wasn't his. He had just finished delivering a repaired cell phone nearby, but the sight of the mansion on fire drew him in like a magnet. While everyone around him watched the blaze from a distance, hypnotized by the tragedy, something inside Malik shifted. He couldn't just stand by. He knew someone was inside. He could feel it. Driven by an uncontrollable force, Malik pushed through the onlookers who tried to stop him. Smoke already enveloped the area, but he noticed a part of the structure that hadn't yet been consumed by the flames. A side wall, further from the fire's center. His sharp eyes quickly assessed the situation. He had to act fast. There was no time to wait for an official rescue. Something in his mind began working like a mechanical puzzle, triggered by his expertise in repairs and improvisation. Malik ran to a tree near the mansion's wall. Using the strength of his arms and legs, he climbed the tree with agility, reaching the highest branch that allowed him to leap to the second floor of the building. The fall's impact was brutal on his legs, but he quickly got up. The mansion felt like a labyrinth of fire and smoke, each hallway more hostile than the last. He held his breath and advanced through the destroyed corridors, searching for a way to reach Isabella. Every step was a battle against the suffocating heat and almost non-existent visibility. Malik's heart pounded, and sweat dripped down his face. He knew the ceiling could collapse at any moment, but he had to keep going. His ears perked up when he heard a muffled cough and a faint moan. It was weak, but it was enough. With each meter he advanced, the smoke seemed to grow denser and the heat more unbearable. The floor creaked beneath his feet, announcing the imminent danger of collapse. He approached a door that appeared to lead to a bedroom and pushed it open with all the strength he had left. Inside, he saw Isabella lying on the floor, struggling to breathe. Her skin was pale, her hair disheveled, and her eyes closed as if she were on the verge of passing out. Malik crouched beside her, carefully touching her arm to check her condition. She was alive, but each breath was a painful effort. Without thinking twice, he lifted her in his arms, feeling the weight of her limp body. She was light, but the effort amidst the smoke and heat made the task monumental. He knew getting out wouldn't be easy. The stairs he had used were crumbling, and the heat was intensifying. He remembered a window at the far end of the hallway, the only escape route before the ceiling gave in completely. With Isabella in his arms, Malik raced down the corridor, his steps quick but cautious, avoiding the falling chunks of ceiling and walls. Upon reaching the window, he saw that the drop wouldn't be simple, but it was his only chance. He propped Isabella against the wall for a moment, and, with a piece of iron he found on the floor, broke the window glass. The flames were starting to reach that spot, and the heat was unbearable. Malik didn't have time to hesitate. He pulled Isabella close and, with all the remaining strength, lifted her and guided her out the window. The jump was risky, but he managed to soften the fall by landing in the garden bushes. The impact was hard, but nothing compared to the relief of escaping alive from that prison of fire. As Malik struggled to catch his breath, lying on the ground beside Isabella, he heard the sound of firefighters and sirens in the distance. He looked up at the sky, now tinged with a dark orange hue, and felt the weight of what he had just done. He had risked his life for someone he barely knew, out of pure instinct for survival and compassion, and deep down, he knew that nothing would ever be the same. Minutes later, Isabella began to regain consciousness. Her eyes slowly opened, and the first thing she saw was Malik's face, still panting, with soot staining his skin. Their eyes met, and she whispered weakly, "You saved me." Malik didn't respond immediately. He just nodded, feeling the gravity of the situation. That night had changed everything, and he knew, with a strange certainty, that their fates were now intertwined. The dawn brought deceptive calm to the city, but in Malik's heart, there was a storm of emotions. He had barely slept after the previous night's events. The rescue of Isabella still haunted him, and the memories of the flames, the suffocating heat, and the weight of her body in his arms were vivid, almost tangible. He couldn't imagine that his life could change so drastically in a matter of minutes. Though the local news was buzzing about the anonymous hero who saved the daughter of one of the richest men in the country, Malik tried to return to his routine as if nothing had happened. Seated at the simple kitchen table, Malik ate his breakfast while watching his mother, Rosa, straighten up the house before leaving for work. She seemed unaware of the courage her son had shown. The sound of cars and the bustling street invaded the small apartment, a constant reminder of the world outside. But Malik couldn't get Isabella out of his mind. The look she gave him when she awoke, the silent gratitude in their brief connection after escaping the fire. "You're quiet today, son. Did something happen?" Rosa asked, placing a cup of coffee in front of Malik. He hesitated for a moment, unsure how to explain what he had experienced the previous night. "Nothing much, Mom. Just a different kind of night," he replied with a half smile, trying to ease her concern. Malik was used to being discreet. He had grown up in an environment where showing weakness or boasting about accomplishments was not an option. He always preferred to act, letting his skills speak for themselves. But that morning, something more was about to happen, something he could never have predicted. As he finished his coffee, the roar of a powerful engine sounded outside the house. Malik looked up toward the window. A shiny black luxury car was parking in front of the building. It wasn't common to see that kind of vehicle around here. It was an out-of-place scene, as if the world of the wealthy was directly invading his reality in a way he hadn't expected. A tall man, impeccably dressed in a suit, stepped out of the car. His rigid posture and the way he looked around made it clear he was on a mission. Malik instantly knew who he was, even before the man approached. It was Alberto Valverde, the magnate, Isabella's father. Rosa watched from the window, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Malik, who is that man?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Malik stood slowly, as if each step was too heavy, and walked to the door. When he opened it, he found himself face to face with Alberto Valverde, who was looking at him with a mixture of seriousness and something Malik couldn't quite identify. Gratitude? Relief? "Malik, right?" Alberto began, his voice firm but with a touch of respect that Malik hadn't expected from someone so powerful. "I'm Alberto Valverde. I assume you've heard of me." Malik nodded, trying not to let the wave of emotions show as he stood before the man who, until yesterday, had been just a distant figure in the media. "I'm here to talk to you, Malik, about what you did last night. You saved my daughter's life," Alberto said, his eyes fixed on the young man. There was a weight in his voice that conveyed the gravity of the situation. Malik stayed silent, unsure how to respond. He didn't consider himself a hero. He had done what he thought needed to be done. But standing before this man, everything seemed more complicated. "I just did what anyone would have done, Mr. Valverde," Malik replied humbly, though deep down he knew many would not have had the same courage. Alberto sighed and looked down for a moment before continuing. "No, Malik, you did much more than that, and I want to thank you, not just with words because they'll never be enough. I want to offer you an opportunity that could change your life." Alberto's eyes narrowed, and Malik sensed that the man was about to make a proposal he never could have expected. "I know you're a talented young man. Fixing devices, solving technical problems, that's how you've been helping your community, right? I've done some research on you." Alberto's last words left Malik intrigued. Had the magnate really taken the time to investigate his life? It was surreal to think that someone like Alberto Valverde would spend time learning about a boy from the outskirts. "I've heard you have a dream, to study engineering, right?" Alberto continued, his voice softening. "I want to help you make that dream a reality. I'm offering a full scholarship to the best university in the country. All expenses paid. You'll be able to study engineering with the best professors, and you'll have all the tools at your disposal. The future will be yours, Malik." Alberto's words hung in the air like an unexpected gift, but one heavy with consequences. Malik, who had always dreamed of attending university, could never have imagined that his chance would come this way. His heart raced, and his mind began processing what it all meant. He would have the opportunity to study at the same level as those who had always seemed light years ahead of him. For a moment, he looked at his mother, Rosa, who stood at the kitchen door, watching the scene with a mix of pride and concern. The decision to accept that offer, tempting as it was, wouldn't be simple. Malik looked at Alberto, feeling the weight of the responsibility the offer carried. Accepting it would mean leaving everything he knew behind, stepping into a completely different world where he would have to fight to fit in and prove his worth every day. More than that, he knew that getting closer to Alberto Valverde also meant being near Isabella, which could complicate things even more. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Valverde. It's an incredible opportunity, but I need time to think about it," Malik answered honestly, his gaze steady but filled with uncertainty. Alberto nodded, understanding Malik's hesitation. He had expected an immediate answer, but respected the young man's need to reflect. "I understand. Take all the time you need. This offer is yours, Malik, and it has no expiration date. Just know I'm doing this because you saved the most important thing to me, my daughter." and I'll never be able to thank you enough for that." With those words, Alberto said goodbye, leaving Malik alone with his thoughts. The black car pulled away from the street, and the calmness of the morning returned, but now everything felt different. Malik sat back at the table, his mind in turmoil. He knew the offer could change his life forever, but at what cost? Could he navigate that new world, or would he lose himself in the process? Rosa approached, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. "Son, this is a rare opportunity, but whatever you decide, I'll be by your side. Always." Her words, though simple, brought some comfort to Malik's heart. He knew he couldn't run from a choice like this. Destiny was calling, and he would have to decide which path to follow. After the fire and the dramatic rescue, Malik threw himself into his studies. The university where he had earned a place thanks to Alberto's offer was like another planet. Luxurious, with cutting-edge technology, and attended by the children of business moguls, politicians, and celebrities. Malik felt out of place in that environment, but his determination kept him from being intimidated. In the first few days, he remained reserved. Conversations about exotic vacations, imported cars, and exclusive parties made no sense to him. While most students arrived in cars or with private drivers, Malik took 2 buses and a van to cross the city. However, one thing connected him to his peers: his intelligence. He quickly stood out in engineering classes, solving complex problems with the same ease he used to fix devices back in his neighborhood. Isabella, meanwhile, saw her life transform. She found herself increasingly drawn to Malik's resilient personality. Unlike everyone around her, he wasn't impressed by her wealth or status. He was real, authentic, and that authenticity awakened something in Isabella she hadn't even known existed. Gradually, they began spending more time together, first studying in the university library, then going for long walks on campus. However, this unlikely bond wasn't viewed favorably by everyone, especially by Carlos, Isabella's fiancé. Carlos was an ambitious businessman, a partner of Alberto Valverde, and heir to a family as wealthy as the Valverdes. His engagement to Isabella had been arranged years before as a strategic alliance between the two families. Although Isabella had never felt much for him, she had always accepted the relationship as inevitable. Now, seeing Isabella and Malik grow closer, Carlos felt his control over his fiancée slipping away. He began investigating Malik, looking for any flaw or secret that could disqualify the young hero. After all, Carlos had a lot to lose and would not allow a boy from the outskirts to threaten his plans for power and ascension. As Malik and Isabella grew closer, new challenges emerged for both of them. Isabella began to notice that her father, Alberto, was not as comfortable with their friendship as she had thought. Though grateful for his daughter's rescue, Alberto was a practical man and saw in Carlos the ideal son-in-law, someone who would ensure the continuity of his empire. He respected Malik, but the idea of his daughter becoming romantically involved with a young man from humble beginnings disturbed him deeply, even though he wouldn't admit it openly. "Isabella, I know you and Malik have been studying together, but it's important to maintain a certain distance. He's a promising young man, but there are things you don't understand yet," Alberto said during a dinner, trying to be subtle but making his dissatisfaction clear. Isabella was angered by the comment, but didn't know how to respond. There was something more in her father's words. She sensed a tension, as if he knew something she didn't. Determined to confront him, Isabella began investigating her father's actions more closely. Over time, she discovered that Alberto was involved in shady real estate transactions, using unethical means to acquire land, especially in peripheral areas where people like Malik and his mother lived. Isabella was horrified to learn that many of the evictions carried out by her father's companies resulted in the forced removal of entire families. Worse still, one of the areas affected was the neighborhood where Malik and his mother lived, which was about to be demolished to make way for a new luxury complex. The revelation that her own father was behind the destruction of Malik's community was a devastating blow. Isabella found herself torn between her family loyalty and the growing affection she felt for Malik. Isabella knew she had to tell Malik the truth. She found him in the university library, where he was studying with intense focus, surrounded by books and notes. Isabella's expression was different. She seemed nervous, something Malik quickly noticed. "Malik, I need to talk to you. This isn't easy to say, But you deserve to know. Isabella began hesitantly. Malik looked at her curiously, but also with a touch of concern. He had already sensed that something was wrong, especially with the recent tension between Carlos and the growing distance from Alberto. What's going on? Malik asked, now serious, sensing the weight in Isabella's voice. It's about your neighborhood, Santo Antonio. I found out my father. He's behind a project for the eviction. They want to demolish everything to build a luxury condo complex. And I'm so sorry, Malik, but the order's already been signed. Her words hit like a direct blow. Malik stood still for a moment, processing the information. Pain and anger swirled in his heart. His home, the place where he grew up, where his mother fought for years, was about to be destroyed. And the person responsible was the father of the girl he was beginning to admire and felt a deep connection with. Your father did this? Malik asked, incredulous, his voice trembling with restrained rage. Yes, I just found out. I'm trying to find a way to stop it, but I don't know if I have the power to do that. Isabella, visibly shaken, tried to reach for Malik's hand, but he instinctively pulled away. I don't know what to think, Isabella. I don't know if I can trust you or any of you, Malik responded, feeling betrayed. Malik quickly left, leaving Isabella behind. Immersed in her own conflicts and regrets, he needed time to think about everything. His dream of studying engineering now seemed overshadowed by a bigger fight, saving his neighborhood, his community, and protecting his family from losing everything. In the days that followed, Malik avoided Isabella and any contact with the Valverde family. He couldn't afford to be distracted. Meanwhile, he began meeting with community leaders in Santo Antonio, looking for ways to resist the eviction. He used his intelligence and resources to organize protests and mobilizations, gaining support not just in his neighborhood but in other areas affected by similar projects. Carlos, who had learned the truth about Alberto Valverde's plans, saw an opportunity to further undermine the relationship between Isabella and Malik. He approached Alberto, suggesting they expedite the eviction process, making any organized resistance impossible. Alberto, if we let these protesters gain more support, your name will end up in a scandal. We need to act quickly and discreetly, Carlos suggested with a calculated smile. Alberto, now pressured by Carlos and the risk of tarnishing his reputation, gave in. He ordered the eviction process to be accelerated, setting a date for the demolition of the houses. As Malik tried everything to stop the demolition, he received an unexpected visit. His mother, Rosa, was visibly worried and held an old envelope in her hands. She explained that there was something about Malik's past that he needed to know. Malik, I never told you this, but you were adopted. I raised you as my own, and you will always be my son. But there's something you need to see now, Rosa said, handing him the envelope. Inside the envelope, Malik found a birth certificate and a handwritten letter. The revelation was shocking. Malik was the biological son of none other than Alberto Valverde. In his youth, Alberto had had a secret relationship with a woman who worked at one of his companies. When the woman became pregnant, she was forced to give the baby up for adoption to avoid a scandal. Rosa, who had been working as a maid at the time, took the baby and raised him as her own. Malik, still stunned by the discovery, saw his world turn upside down. He was the son of the man who was destroying his community and manipulating everything around him. Connections that once seemed improbable now made tragic and painful sense. With a heart full of pain and uncertainty, Malik confronted Alberto Valverde. He wanted nothing more than answers. Why did you do it? Why did you leave me? Malik demanded, facing the man he now knew as his father. Alberto, caught off guard by Malik's revelation, was speechless for a moment. He had made selfish decisions in the past, and now they were all coming back to haunt him. I didn't know what to do at the time. I did what I thought was best to protect my reputation, my family. But, Malik, I never wanted to hurt you. Alberto tried to justify, but the guilt was clear on his face. Malik, however, wasn't interested in explanations. He knew the past couldn't be changed, but the future was still in his hands. With his unshakable determination, he decided to fight for his community now with even more strength, knowing that his greatest enemy was also his own blood.